today on the Daily Gospel Network.
Welcome, church family. I'm Renee Johnson with the Daily Gospel Network, where we bring you the Lord's Word every day from some of the country's most inspiring churches and pastors. And today is no different. Let's check out one of the newest members of the Daily Gospel Network.
Many verses in the Bible show how God feels about children. We are all God's children, but He shows that innocent children are beloved in His eyes. When we come to Christ, we come as children with repentance and humility, understanding that God takes care of us. Sometimes, as we're walking that Christian life, once we become strong in the Word, we feel like we could carry the load on our own. But we cannot carry the load on our own. We may attempt to do it, but the load has to be given to God. All problems, all disagreements, all discord, all of that, all sin must be taken care of by God. We try to prove that we have grown and are in a specific space that only God can open up for us. God does not look at our works. Ephesians 2:8 tells us that it is by grace that we have been saved through faith. And this is not from ourselves. It is the gift of God. To be exact, God has to show us grace and mercy for us to continue to live as people on this earth. Every day that we go to sleep and we wake up, it is a blessing from God, because He could have took the breath out of our body. He could have took the use of our limbs. If we could walk and talk and we are able to see and continue on for another day, then we must understand that that is just a blessing from God. We didn't do any of that on our own. None of it. And this is where the flesh comes in. The flesh is weak and are listed in Galatians 5:19 as sexual immorality, impurity, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, divisions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and everything like these things. God keeps reminding us that these things cause us to lose our inheritance, which is His kingdom. Galatians 22 begins to tell us that the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There is no law against such things, because it comes from those who belong to Christ Jesus, who had crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. If you go back to chapter 2 in Galatians, exactly chapter 2, verses 15 through 21, you will also see that a person is not justified by the works of the law, but by faith in Jesus Christ. No one will be justified by the works of the law. Paul states that he died through the law so he could live for God. What's powerful is when he says, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. Christ has to live inside of us. Christ is inside of us. All we have to do is be willing and able and latch on and hold on to Christ's hand, try to live by the guidelines that he has shown us, and eventually get to God. But we cannot get to God unless we go through Christ or have Christ-like behavior. We have to have a relationship with our Creator as well. He goes even further to say that even in this body, we are to live by faith in Jesus, who loved us enough to give himself for us. God's grace is not to be put aside at any time. We can't put God to the side at any time. We must hold on to God's unchanging hand continuously, and we must always try to have the right intentions in our heart. I'm very, very adamant about the right intentions of our heart, because what goes in a man does not defile him. What comes out of a man defiles him. Why? Because it comes from the heart. It comes from where you speak from. When you speak in drunkenness and things like that, you are speaking from your heart. Even though you are intoxicated, what you're saying shows your true feelings about a thing. In Galatians 2, Paul arrives in Jerusalem and had to sit down no longer as a Gentile, but a servant of God, and was unsure of how these esteemed leaders would share his purpose and see if it would be a collaboration of like minds that are preaching the gospel. This is what we are supposed to have. See, Paul left. He went into exile for over 14 years. And he went and he sought out God. He became a beacon of light for others so that he could come back and preach the gospel, because he was once a Gentile that did not believe. So when he stepped back in to speak with these people in the church, he had to show them that he had changed. He had to show them that he had the gospel in him. At first, it was unmerited because Paul had been a Gentile himself. But once he was noted for his grace, they agreed to the collaboration with him, and it was agreeable that the poor will be taken care of. That's part of us serving. When we serve and we serve others, we treat people the way that we would like to be treated. We serve them without complaining or having any kind of problems with it. When we serve and allow others to be that in it. No, when we serve, we are solidifying our communion with Christ, because the greatest of all with the fruit of the Spirit is love. Love is what Christ taught. Love is what Christ wants us to have for each other. But they said even with Christ, his own didn't even accept him. His own did not accept the fact that he was living a God-like life. So they persecuted him. They lied on him. They blasphemed his name. They did all kinds of things to Christ until he was put on the cross. Even Christ did not. He understood what that meant. And even though he was willing, he asked God, if it's your will, take this cup from me. Because he knew the burdens of the world. He understood that he was being sacrificed. But once he was sacrificed, he was able to come back on that third day and show them everything that he had been telling them had come to fruition, and it was the truth. When he was risen, after he had risen, Christ did not go back down into the ground and meet a grave. He did not meet a grave, and he went to hell and snatched the keys from Satan. Jesus is universal. And we go through Jesus to get to God, because God put Jesus here because he found that the humans that he had made, their heart was too full of the flesh. Their heart was too full for him. So God had to make somebody specifically for him to carry out and show us how we should live our lives. This is how Christ helps to save us. But our salvation comes from God. Our salvation is because of God's grace and mercy. It's not because of anything that we may have done. We may go to church every Sunday. We may not miss Bible study on Tuesday. We may go to the revival from Fridays and Sunday. No matter what we do, our works are not what matter to God. God doesn't care about our house, our cars, our clothes. He doesn't care how big our house is, how much wisdom, how much education we have. Not wisdom, because he gives us wisdom when we ask for it and we're sincere with that prayer. He will give us wisdom, and he will make the provision. Trust. If he brings you to something, he's going to bring you through that thing, whatever it may be. It may look good to you, it may look bad to you, but at the same time, God has already taken care of it for you. Before you could even open your mouth to make a request from God, God has seen what is going on. God has seen the intentions of your heart. God has seen and determined if you should be judged because you have judged other people. God don't play with us. He sure doesn't. God does not allow us to just take advantage of him over and over and over again. We are a generation that does not listen. And listening is a key part of being in tune with God. Like the comedian said, God is your light, and you got to be in tune also with yourself, which is your star player. I think that's how he said it. He said we have to be in tune with our star player. We have to be close enough in a relationship with God in order to receive the grace and mercy that he makes available for us. Because sometimes, and to be honest, I'm thinking that this is probably what has been happening from generation to generation, and we have all these generational curses because no one has listened. God been asking us to listen to him from the beginning. That's why we were taken out of the garden. Once we had experienced sin, then that meant that we knew sin. God did not intend for us to know any sin. But that cunning Satan that comes to steal, kill, and destroy, he will place the thought in your head. And he will have you thinking all kind of things, including the fact that he's there for you. You know, he tries to imitate God, but there's no way for him to imitate God because he cannot give the same thing that God can give. What God gives is everlasting. What Satan gives is temporary. So that's why we are encouraged to not depend and believe in any of this tangible stuff that we can see. We have to trust in God, keep our faith in God, and let him take care of everything. When I say that God will take care of everything, he will. He sure will. It might not be in your time, and it might not be the way you think it should be. But God always comes right on time for every situation that you may find yourself in. Like I said, if he brings you to it, he'll bring you through it. If he gives you an assignment, he's made provision for it. All you have to do is do what he asks you to do and be obedient and trust his word. Give him the glory, honor, and praise that he deserves. Because if God had to look at us without looking through Jesus, there's no way we would survive. If God looked at us without Jesus being right there, standing in the gap for us, play if you want to have a relationship with God. Have a relationship with God. Make sure it's strong. Make sure, because we don't know. These times are getting more we see more tribulation and more problems and more things that's coming towards us. Who's to say they won't take all of our Bibles one day? Who's to say that this internet will be up for you to ask Google in the future? We don't know what the future holds. So we need to get into our word, understand our word, ask God for what we want, and leave it be and let God take care of it. And it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to let God take care of it. It really is. How many times have you given a thing to God and you go back and you do something and you're trying to make it different and you put your input in and it just goes all wrong? We have to let God take care of those problems. Once we give him something, we can't take it back. It's not right for us to take it back because whatever God gives us, he don't take it back unless we are deemed unworthy. And with God, it takes a pretty good amount of stuff to deem you unworthy of his word, his love, his forgiveness, his grace, and his mercy. We serve a living, forgiving God. God will allow us to live. God will not only give you what you need, he will give you exactly what you want with no problem. We have not because we ask not. But I tend to think that when it comes down to our relationship with God, we have to use our own minds, use our own intellect, because it's people out here that are using the word to make the people straight. And we don't want to stray away from the Lord. We want to be in that number. When our time is up, we want to hear God say, "Well done, servant. Well done, servant." Servant does not mean boasting. Servant does not mean being arrogant, because pride is something that God does not like. No pride. No pride. You better put that pride to the side, because at any given moment, if you ever feel like it's all because of you, you are having the wrong thoughts. And Satan is running around in your mind rent free. He will give us those thoughts. He will make us try to make us say, "Well, Lord, you said you was going to do this and you ain't did it yet." That's how Satan will have us talking about the God that we serve, the God that has been good to us, the God that has loved us, the God that has sustained us, the God that has protected us. Satan will try to make you have doubt in God. But God never leaves us or forsake us. To be honest, Satan is the biggest deceiver that you could ever have in this world. Satan will work through things, situations, and people to try to destroy every step you have made toward the Creator. Satan will cause you to be distracted and not fulfill your purpose and not do what God tells you to do, because he has come up with some ridiculous idea that is not going to work, that will work, and it's only temporary. We don't need a Band-Aid. We need a total healing of this land. We need total healing. And that's the people, the animals, the air, the trees, everything. We have taken advantage of everything when it has come to God. And God is the only one that has given us. God will put you in his bosom just like Abraham did Lazarus. Put you in his bosom. All I know is the testimonies that I have for my life. If it had not been for God, the truth is, it wouldn't have been no more me. God has protected and spared me and my children in many different situations. That's why my trust is in him. That's why when he said, "It's time for you to go," it was time for me to go. It was time for me to go when I had to leave and go to a foreign land. It was like I was in the wilderness, depending on nobody but God. There wasn't a human being that I could have depended on at that point in time in my life. But God sustained us. God kept a roof over our head. God made sure we had money. God made sure we had clothes. God made sure we had food. God sustained us. My family and I are strong in the word because God has sustained us through many different trials and tribulations. Even when it comes to our children, that can be a trying time. Because once they get a certain age, they don't listen to us as parents anymore. So we have no choice but to give God his children back and let him put them on the path that they need to be on, so that they will see and glorify and magnify his name. We do what we do as parents when we're raising them. Yes, we teach them prayers. We take them to church. We put them in all kind of activities. But that does not make them exempt from sin. And once they understand right and wrong, their sins are not on us anymore. Their sins are on them. So we have to stay in prayer for our children, because our children tend to get in the wrong, and Satan is, like I said, he's one of the biggest deceivers. He will deceive our children, have them in places that they don't need to be in, have them doing things that they're not supposed to do, have you on your knees day in and day out, praying for them. Because sometimes, I can't say all the time, but sometimes we have to ask God to forgive them, because they know not what they do, especially when it comes down to them being taught the word and having to follow the word. And God says, children, honor your mother and father, so that your days will belong upon the land. So this is an instruction that God gives. And when we can't handle them anymore, we have to give them to God. We have to let God have them and keep them and sustain them. And we have to stay out of the way. Just like sometimes we get on our own way, we could get in God's way when He's trying to do something. Like I said before, everything from God is a lesson or a blessing. Either you're going to get blessed by something, or you're going to learn a lesson that's going to take care of you for the rest of your days on this earth. That word can protect you. That word can keep you from being envious, from coveting, from wanting more and more and more. If we want more and more and more, we need more faith. We need more discernment. We need more love. We need more communication. We need God to clean this heart of ours. Because our thoughts come from Him. In reality, that's why it's what comes out that defiles a man. And they tell us about eating this and eating that. Okay, in the Old Testament, yes, we had to show atonement. And we had things that we were instructed not to eat. But do we eat them? Yes. I'm a crab lover myself. But we're not supposed to be eating that. We're not supposed to eat pork. But we eat it. And not like a good old rib dinner. There are things that we do that we're not supposed to do.
For more information on today's Spotlight Church, visit them on the internet and follow them on social media. I'm Renee Johnson with the Daily Gospel Network. And until next time, remember, we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us.